What a phenomenon. First it passed the smoothie cleanse, then Game of Thrones, even Frozen, then the other Frozen. The #1 best-selling book on Amazon right now, a 700-page tome packed with words like disequilibria and Ricardian. Capital by French economist Thomas Piketty. His insights on inequality shined a light on the 1%. The Occupy movement ran with it. And now Piketty's tour de force is taking the policy world by storm. Stunning his publisher, creating a media frenzy. Check out these dueling columns in Friday's New York Times. Piketty's central insight: inequality feeds on itself. Over time, across countries, investment returns exceed economic growth, which means inheritance becomes more valuable than work, and the wealthy pull away from everyone else. It happened before, he says. It's happening again now. And we're going to talk about this on the roundtable now with ABC's Matthew Dowd, Alicia Menendez, host of AM Tonight on our sister network Fusion, Bill Kristol, editor of the Weekly Standard, and Paul Krugman, Nobel Prize-winning economist of the New York Times and Princeton. And Paul, we saw your column in the New York Times up there in the piece. You also wrote a review in the New York Review of Books where you called Piketty's book a magnificent, sweeping meditation on inequality. It will change both the way we think about society and the way we do economics. He's been known to economists like you for a long time, now breaking out.
Yeah, I mean, what he'd done before is a lot of what we know about the 1% and the 0.1% and all that ultimately comes from Piketty and his circle of associated economists. But now he's put it all together into this amazing, comprehensive framework, which happens to be beautiful in ways that are hard to explain if you don't know the technical stuff. But it's an amazing book. It really changes the way you think about a lot of things that are going on in the world right now.
And what a chord it struck Matthew Dowd.
Well, it's a sign of actually where the country is, really where the world is, but where the country is. We have Elizabeth Warren, who wrote her book before this book came out, obviously, and talks about a lot of the same principles. We have many people in both parties talk about the same principles. I think it's a sign that actually Washington, D.C. today, where we don't have a lot of leaders actually leading a movement that is related to this and how to fix this problem. The question is we have all the facts, we know the situation, and nobody as of yet has stepped up and said, here's how to fix it.
One of the things that Paul Krugman writes, Bill Kristol, is this is also catching conservatives somewhat flat-footed.
Well, I think conservatives have some quarrels with Piketty, but actually I myself tell my fellow conservatives, don't be afraid of this. Let's have a debate about what policies are better for the middle class. I think the Republican Party has become not critical enough of crony capitalism. Elizabeth Warren, as you pointed out in the interview, was apparently a Republican until 1996. I guess she voted for Reagan twice and all that. So there's no reason not to go back to those policies, which were more pro-middle class, and have new policies that really care about middle America and take on crony capitalism.
Yeah, I think that, but what's really important is not just, Piketty talks a lot about the period, the Gilded Age, where there wasn't a whole lot of crony capitalism, because there wasn't a whole lot of government, but was still very much an oligarchy, largely based on inherited wealth, even more so in Europe than in the United States. And he says we're heading back to that. So if you try and put it into a framework where it's all about cronyism, you're not going to get there. Piketty is actually saying, unless you have the kinds of things we've done away with, which is really high inheritance taxes, and unless you do away with policies that are deliberately designed to restrain the influence of great wealth, you evolve back into that kind of society which we don't want to be.
The Gilded Age was all about, in the U.S., crony capitalism. What was the Teddy Roosevelt critique of the Gilded Age? That people had favors from government, the railroad barons, etc. I worry less about punishing the wealthy and more about helping the middle class. And there, I think the Republicans, I think a lot of Republicans are advancing ideas on that. Some Democrats
that
doesn't go nearly. He would say that doesn't go nearly far enough.
But one of the reasons this does strike a chord, Alicia, is you saw again this week in the New York Times this pretty stunning thing. I mean, everybody's been aware that the middle class feel like they're falling behind. Some confirmation this week that we're not even the top middle class country anymore. Canada's pulled ahead, and the poor in the United States falling behind many European countries.
Right, and we know part of this is generational. I mean, for my generation, if you were lucky enough to have a college degree and you graduated after 2007, you came into one of the worst economies, and you will be playing a lifetime of catch-up. We also know that there's a racial component to this, that a white family is likely to have about 6 times as much wealth than a black or Hispanic family coming out of the recession. So we know those numbers, and I think where the rubber hits the road is whether or not you can actually do anything about it politically, given the amount of money that's now in our pool.
There's a lot of American myths that are collapsing here, right? We have the best middle class in the world? No, we don't. We are richer, so that even our poor are rich. No, we don't. We are not a society of inherited wealth. We're a society of self-made men. Well, actually, no, and we're well on our way to becoming a society of inherited wealth.
And your point, Matt, is the country already gets that, but the political system not responding.
Well, the country already gets that, and they are trying to figure out how to keep forcing this to change and forcing this to be dealt with. I think in the end what we have is a system where we need a vibrant media that focuses on this problem on a day-to-day basis. Doesn't celebrate the latest rich billionaire who sort of says, here's I made a bunch of money and I have 42 employees like WhatsApp did, where you can basically create companies now and create wealth without ever hiring anybody in this country. And I think most people think that the Democrats and the Republicans, so there are a few voices on each side, are totally in bed with Wall Street, are totally in bed with the large corporations. And I, for one, think if the Republicans were smart and the Democrats were smart, they would figure out a smart populist who could speak directly to this message and figure out how to get us through it.
You're saying the same thing.
Yeah, but I think, so let's do a little test. Will Republicans in the House, which they control in 2014, go after the big insurance companies, which have a total bailout, a slush fund in Obamacare to insure them against any loss since they went along with Obamacare and are benefiting from it? Will the Republicans go after, and I think they will, the Export-Import Bank, 55% of whose loans go to Boeing? Will Democrats join them in these attacks on crony capitalism?
Those are tiny things. You should know that just by the numbers, those are tiny
examples.
things.
You
but
agree,
they're
don't
not
you?
good examples. They're pretty much unique. I mean, you really look. No, great inequality in the United States is not created by government contracts. There is some of it. There is some abuse. There's people grazing on federal land without paying fees. There's coal companies but that's actually not most of what it's about. And what the crucial thing is that Piketty is saying that unless you have active policies to combat concentration of wealth, it does tend to reach levels that are really scary. And I've got your populist Republican. It's called Teddy Roosevelt. Let's go with him.